Look closely at this silver dirham. It features Arabic script, minted in the heart of Baghdad. How did it travel 5,000 miles to be buried in the frozen dirt of Norway? Most people see Vikings as mindless brutes, but history's receipt reveals a more terrifying reality. They were the original venture capitalists of the Dark Ages. They didn't just raid, they performed hostile takeovers and audited kingdoms with fire and steel. Welcome back to History's Receipt. We've audited the debts of the samurai and the shocking poverty of ancient Rome. Today, we calculate the ROI, the return on investment, of a Viking raid. We're going to find out why a single sail cost more than a warrior's life. The ledger is open. A Viking longship was the 9th century equivalent of a modern stealth fighter. It was the absolute peak of engineering. To build a standard 65-foot skate, you needed 10 tons of high-quality oak, felled in the middle of winter when the sap was at its lowest to prevent rotting. In today's money, the timber alone would cost you $20,000. But wood was the cheap part of this capital investment. The real expense was the sail. A single sail required 200 pounds of high-quality wool, the annual production of nearly 300 sheep. Spinning and weaving that wool took one person 5 years of full-time work. The labor cost for a single sail today: over $60,000. When you saw a Viking fleet, you were seeing years of stolen life from every woman in their village, woven into fabric. Total startup cost: nearly $150,000. Raiding wasn't just about swinging axes, it was a logistical nightmare. A crew of 40 men needed 100 pounds of food every day to stay at peak performance. They carried dried stockfish, sour milk called skyr, and ale. If you were stuck at sea for 20 days, you carried 2,000 pounds of cargo just to stay alive. In the Viking world, hunger was a deadlier enemy than the English army. Navigation was another massive hidden cost. Without a compass, they used sunstones, Iceland's spar crystals that could find the sun even behind thick clouds. One navigational mistake meant a $150,000 investment sinking to the bottom of the Atlantic. Every Viking expedition was a gamble where the stakes were the survival of the entire village's economy. If the ship didn't return, the village starved. But here is the receipt history books often hide. The biggest profit didn't come from gold chalices. It came from human inventory. Vikings were the primary human traffickers of Northern Europe. A young healthy slave, a thrall, could be sold in Baghdad for the equivalent of $5,000. Humans were the ultimate, self-transporting goods. They could walk themselves to the market under the threat of an axe. In one single raid on a coastal monastery, a Viking crew could capture 50 people. That is a $250,000 payout. Gold is heavy and hard to find, but human freedom was a crop that could be harvested every season. This was the dark engine of the Viking economy. The silver coins found in Scandinavia today are the receipts of these human transactions. They traded the freedom of Europe for the silver of the East. Eventually, the Vikings realized raiding was high risk. Why fight when you can just charge a protection fee? This was the Danegeld. Kings in England and France paid thousands of pounds of silver just to make the Vikings go away. In the year 991, King Ethelred paid 10,000 pounds of silver. Today, that is worth over $6 million. It was the first subscription service in history. By 1012, the payments skyrocketed to £48,000. The Vikings were effectively taxing the entire Western world without ever holding an election. Pay every year, or we burn your office. It was a business model based on terror. But like all subscriptions, eventually, the customer gets tired of paying. The Viking Age ended when the global market changed. As Europe became organized and Christianity spread, the cost of raiding became higher than the profit of trading. They traded their axes for ledgers and their longships for merchant vessels. History always keeps the receipt. Subscribe for our next audit. See you then.